Why ruins in art? Why such a good subject matter? Ironically, but being so sort of overrepresented in things that are easy to put forth. It's a ruin. Psychologically, you know what the pieces that came together in the past to make the ruin are. It's just the effect of time on it. The game of iconography. You can invent your own ruins wholesale, like I'm doing right now. But it's just the image of it. It works. It works recognizably so because it's a sort of sculpted chaos. It has this form to it that speaks another language than just the regular. It's a piece of art. No, it's a ruin. It's a it's a piece of something else. Imagine, if you will, that you are a listless, no talent hipster from the 1600s who has to go to painting school. Uh, as it was back then, as it is today, you usually just a rich kid endeavor or someone who's willing to go into a lot of debt. You've got to find something interesting to draw that isn't just the everyday life scenes. What's readily available in a lot of the, I don't know, the European high society cities of the past, Florence, Rome, Palermo, Venice, I don't know. Probably not Venice so much because it's been alive for longer, but you know what I mean when there's ruins there. There's ruins in town, there's ruins on the coast, there's ruins here, there's ruins there. I mean, Europe of old, all that kind of stuff. It's readily available, and it's a more interesting subject matter. It doesn't move. You can go there, no one's there, especially in the past before mass travel and tourism and whatnot. You've got days to yourself, just painting the ruins if you want. It's a good, it's a good solid thing to latch onto when you're an aspiring artist of ye olden times. Imagine, if you will, you're that guy. It's an easy in a way. It harkens back to learning how to draw when maybe a teacher would have told you, oh, you just got to draw a pile of trash, draw a pile of garbage, draw like empty out your garbage can on the floor and draw that. Make a pile with your laundry, draw a bunch of folded up t-shirts or whatever. It's really just to get a feel for matter itself. The ruin is, like I said, because it's got iconography to it. And if it has iconography, it has a penmanship, it has a recognizable style. Civilizations of the past leaving their signatures, in a sense. Because ruins, not to get all goth on you, but like, that's really what we leave behind, in a sense. The most permanent thing we got is like stone stuff left on the ground in whatever shape. I guess if you were someone who was thinking of projecting, projecting thought and mind in that sort of ethereal dimension of time travel, of saying like, oh, I'm going to speak to millennia from now with this display of rocks on the ground. There's definitely something to it because it has to last. It has to stand the test of time. So you better not make it garbage. But why does representing chaos but somehow giving it little rules here and there? That there must be a stone, there must be a thing to capture the attention, there must be a shadow here, there must be a thing, there must be that. It's rules, it's language, and that's kind of it's an inherent thing. It's almost DNA. You would know what a ruin was even if you'd never gone to history class. You could have divined that this was somehow from people from the past, Unga Bunga, whatever. It's not something you have to be told. So it speaks to you differently than would be something a bit more, I don't know, contemporary to the time. It almost seems like, how on TV or in a movie, when something refers to something topical and current, it just doesn't age. It's just shit. Like 5 years later. But if it's doing something quote unquote corny, where it's talking about the facts of life, the daily goings on, the hassles, the trials and tributes, cats versus dogs, that gets remembered. that doesn't seem so corny in retrospect because it's like, oh well, I guess these things are like, oh, they're so obvious that of course it was, back then. I think that's a more important language for art in a lot of ways than the referential. I think that the way the referential can apply is if you have a certain style to your work, you have a certain language of your own, twist, if you will, but applied to the eternal, applied to what can be seen thousands of years later. Concepts, really, really basic ones. They don't have to be too complicated. They just have to be ones that actually will last forever. They'll be set in stone. What do you really have that's that? Because, I mean, I guess I got a bunch of atoms rearranged in chips and hard drives that are mine that I've put together over the years. Those little tiny little sculptures of mine. Maybe those will last a century or two before it rusts out. Paper, paper, and some ink. Leave this in a drawer for 20 years and see what happens. It just turns brown, crumbles up. It's just a bunch of weird Play-Doh that dries out. You know, it's not like any of this is really permanent or real, but the images of it in your mind, the way that it's carried through generationally, is uncontrollable and something you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about the fact that someone looks at ruins, knows what they are, knows what they are. In a broad sense. Obviously, the language I'm afforded and the perspective on life that I'm afforded is, I mean, it's insanely it's like a fluke. Mass communication and all that garbage. All that stuff that like drives you insane, like watching a ticker on a website for the money that you may or may not invested in the funny money on the internet. That kind of stuff, it's gut wrenching. Grabs you. The day to day that's current to your times is more stressful than it is something memorable. And do you really remember the stress in the end? Do you really remember all the guys who put all the bricks, put all the bricks in the buildings, who probably didn't have great lives compared to yours, but they coped. They had their own vision of it. The subjectivity of that golden era, in a way, that's the real artificial element of it. It's not humanizing the past. It's almost like looking at people as if they were a different creature. But the images will probably remain the same forever. The things that people want to see will probably always remain the same, pretty much forever. It has a certain shape, and that shape is, you, the soul, the whatever. The whatever. That's the real scope of things. I guess that's going a little too deep. Ruins is allegorical for ruins as allegorical for all this tangential complicated shit. You know, doesn't have to doesn't have to mean that either. It could just be something that is insanely referential to they can reference something that's just really stupid and close to home. Oh, everything's lost. Everything's in shambles. Everything's a ruin. So here's some ruins because it soothes me to see things falling apart. See things already have fallen apart. And guess what? The world didn't end. I'm still here to observe everything having fallen apart. Look at that. Something to the absolutely massive. I think that makes things more important. You consider the effort that it takes to put things one place to the other. It's a summation, if you will, the the condition of existence. The eternal paradigm. You're just rearranging atoms, man, before the sun like burns this all up. Yeah, you could look at it like that. something about the chaos too. All just piles of things. Like making one of those 3D simulations in your mind where the blob of goo falls on the oddly shaped object and it has like the scientifically or physically accurate reactions and displacements. It's like doing that but with your brain. Seeing how things fall apart. It's more satisfying. People like when things are crushed. Things are taken from their artificial state. Their artificial state, which is intact, ironically, it's an assembly, and their natural state, which is disassembled. So it's this sort of natural in the sense that that's just forces operating on it without any like human control, except for the destruction itself. You know what I mean? But the act of destruction or things coming apart, that is natural. That is the nature of things. Things do just fall apart. And it's not really a question of mood, or not really a question of your disposition of how well you feel about life to build things back up, because it's just in your nature to do so. Much like it's in the nature of every massive DNA group that built up a bunch of stone buildings and had them crumble and do it again. Maybe not, but do it again. Things just fall apart. Maybe you just do it again. Just keep doing it. That can tie your identity together. After all, if it's uncontrollable, it's more a part of you and your true self than anything you would have told yourself is a part of your true self. Your disassembly, your return to your natural state, is a good thing. Because it was always going to happen. It was always going to be there the whole time. Whether it's a positive destruction or not. Anything. Look at that. There's a ziggurat type thing. I don't like how the background isn't even on this side. I'm not doing something too complicated here. I'm just trying to even it out before I press stop. And that'll be it. That'll be it for now. Alright, ta-ta.